Yes.
What's your topic?
So I went to Iceland the other day, and I've been overseas. I guess this is like my fourth time overseas, my third time. No, fifth time. My fifth time overseas. And I had
offended you at yourself.
I had my
no.
I had my first, and I'm not counting Canada and all that shit. I had my first bout of real anti-Americanism in Iceland, like real to my face anti-Americanism. And I wanted to share the story with you guys, and then kind of talk about why it is that we are much maligned.
Obama.
Yeah. So here's the story. First of all, I want to preface it by saying that people in Iceland, for the most part, like with the exception of a few people, were awesome, like really nice people. A lot of them were very self-deprecating, like why are you even here, kind of thing. Like why would you ever come to this place? You know, like we want to go to U.S. I don't understand why you want to come here. Very nice people, very helpful people. English is fluently spoken there. It's mandatory to learn it. There's only 320,000 people in the entire country, which is unbelievable. That's half the population of San Francisco. And it's about a state the size of Kentucky. So you imagine like when you're in Reykjavik, it's a thriving city. About half the population lives there, and then the rest of the country is just
Sparse.
just very sparse.
Yeah.
Beautiful place though, very desolate, very dark, very snowy. So I went to a bar. We were just like going from bar to bar, like just going from random places, and we it's me and Cheryl, and then two of our friends from really Cheryl's friends from our high school, and then their boyfriends. Well, actually, one husband and one boyfriend. So four of us went to high school together, and then a fifth guy is from Long Island, and then six guys from Utah. Mm-hmm. And we go into this bar and we're just drinking or whatever. This is the weird dichotomy of the stories. These really nice older women are sitting around this table. And we're kind of encroaching a little bit on their space, but they're slowly getting up. And I sit down in someone's seat, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shit." She's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're leaving." And she puts her hand on very warmly puts her hand on my arm, and is like, "I don't, like, please sit, and we're getting out of here." And I was like, "Oh, it's like really nice.
What a nice old lady."
And so that crew of ladies leaves, and we sit down around this table, and there's this older blonde woman, maybe in her 50s, very well dressed,
hot.
She's pretty.
This is the Golden Girls bar. There's all the old women around drinking.
It was just after work, I think. One day, everyone's just like kind of hanging out. And that was the one thing I noticed in Iceland, is that because the city's so small in Reykjavik or whatever, like there's just people of all ages in a lot of just same areas, like because that's where they hang out. Mm-hmm. There's only so many bars, so many restaurants and shit. And we sit down and we're just kind of coddling around. And I go to the bathroom, and then I come back, and this blonde woman's talking to my group or whatever. And she's asking them, like, who invited you to sit here? Like, kind of like rudely or whatever. And she's like, you were not invited to sit here or whatever. And that's how we do it here. And I'm like, we were invited to sit here. And we had this kind of exchange. And the conversation goes where, like, the woman's, like, giving us an attitude. And she's like, where are you from? Or whatever. And we're like, where? And one of my friends is like, where do you think we're from? And she rolls her eyes. She's like, the United States or whatever like that. And I'm like, yeah, where specifically do you think we're from? And she goes like this. She's like, in the South. Like, as an insult.
Oh, yeah.
And this is my first thing where I'm like, I am so sick of the anti-South shit in this country. I really am. The South has a really fucked up history. So does the entire country. Mm-hmm. It's time to kind of move on. I know a lot of very warm and very nice people from the South, very smart people from the South. I am sick of all the anti-South rhetoric. That's just an aside. But she was saying that to us to insult us.
Uh-oh.
And then
you know what happens to people that talk shit, guys.
And the funny thing is that this five of them are kind of just engaging with her and trying to be nice, and I'm being like really fucking rude to her. And what I realized was that like she was being the nicest to me because I was challenging her or whatever. But she would do things like she went and shook Cheryl's hand, said her handshake like wasn't firm enough or whatever, and like was
she wasted or no?
God damn, this is very intrusive.
And then she was saying how she's like one of the last Viking families, and like it's just weird, totally weird shit. Obviously, Iceland has a long Viking history, but like 1,000 years. But she's not the last Viking. I mean, look around. So it then gets to the point where she's talking about how she lived in Boston for a little while or whatever, and so on. And then she's like making fun of like the way we're dressing and why we're here, and like we don't belong, like basically don't belong there, and like why would anyone come here, and like you're basically not invited, you're not welcome in Iceland, kind of shit or whatever, like just straight up like anti-Americanism, like to my face. I've never experienced that before. I've been to Germany, I've been to England, I've been to Japan, like never had a problem really with anyone based on just who I am. And I get like really combative with her. And actually, like Cheryl's friends thought it was like the best because like they don't really know me like that. You guys know me well enough to know that like I'm going to say something to you.
Someone's getting shot.
So she was like, why would you pick Iceland? I'm like, because it's really cheap to get here. And she like kind of just looked at me as opposed to saying like, oh, it's a beautiful country. I'm like, it's just really cheap. We got here for like nothing.
Yeah.
And she was like, and I was saying something to her like, I'm like, you really should be nicer to tourists. Your economy depends on us. And she's like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. You should learn your history. In my mind, I'm like, what does that have to do with history? And I'm like, I have a degree in history from a very good school. I know my history. Your economy collapsed 4 years ago, and your economy is entirely dependent on foreign money, and the economy is based on tourism. So maybe you should be not like everyone else has been nice to us. Why are you busting our balls or whatever? And then she was like making fun. Like she said something so weird where like we were all wearing beanies. And this was the weirdest comment. She's like, no, people would beat the shit out of you if they saw you wearing these beanies around here or whatever. And you notice that in Iceland, a lot of people like pretend like it's not fucking 10 degrees outside. Like it's really actually quite fascinating the way they just walk around. But people are wearing beanies all over the fucking place. So I'm like, what? And we actually walked out the next day and like saw a bunch of kids playing in the snow like with beanies on them.
You should have kicked their ass.
Yeah,
you should have
exactly.
just beat the shit out of them.
So
drag their bloody bodies.
So
over them like, is this what you want?
It was just a weird thing. And then she was making fun of our fashion or whatever. And someone's like, but you follow our fashion, like American and Western European fashion is like the fashion of the world basically. Yep. And she's like, no. She's like, we are way ahead of you, or like stuff like that. And this is the best part. I'm leaving out parts because I don't want to belabor the story. But my favorite part of it was that she got up and she had blue jeans on, and I'm like, those blue jeans are American. And like I keep confronting her, and she keeps complimenting me. She's like, I really like your glasses. That was the last thing she said to me, and then she like walked away, like almost like
this chick was just hammered.
Nice
yeah, she was hammered, but nonetheless, I wanted to just bring up this thing just to tell the story. Also, the 5 people that I were with, or 4, because Cheryl doesn't really watch the show, will probably be watching this, and I want to give them a shout out because we had a great time. But also just kind of recount this story. I don't think I'm leaving out anything too important, because the reason I wanted to tell this story was to ask like if you've ever had encounters like this overseas, and why we're looked at as like such a bad group of people to like some people. I think most people know Americans are just like you in England or in India or in Japan. Like it doesn't matter. But there's like a real anti-American sentiment that is real, and I didn't really think it was real until I experienced it for myself. It was very uncomfortable. It was a very uncomfortable and very real experience where I'm like, this woman is being super fucking rude to us because of where we're from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which, could you imagine if that were the case here, where if every country we had a problem with, we were just rude to the people from that country? It'd be chaos. It'd be chaos. I've never had I've never had anyone sort of have prejudice against me for being American, but I can understand. Like I still hold that this country is the best country on the planet, largely because of the citizens that are in it that help run it. But our political structure is screwed up. Our foreign policy is like laughable. I mean, every day we criticize Russia and our any of our enemies in the Middle East or in Europe for doing these crazy things, and we kind of do similar things. I'm not saying we're going out there and like funding terrorism, but you look at our history over the past 30 years, and it's crazy the shit that the United States government has funded. And so there's no wonder that their people don't like us, because we have a history of putting our nose in places where it doesn't belong for, let's be perfectly honest, profit, for gain, and for the gain of mostly our politicians that are involved in this stuff, right? I'm not saying that we deserve any of the sort of ire that we get across the world, but I don't think that our media, I don't think we're doing a lot to sort of dispel those things. And I think that, the country as a whole could be better. Let's just put it that way. I mean, you said so yourself, like our foreign policy is just, especially Obama's foreign policy is just completely ridiculous. And I don't like any of the candidates that are coming up. I mean, our political system's screwed. We don't have any, it's either a Republican or a Democrat, and they're all jokes. They're all jokes. So the 2016 election is hilarious. Right, there's nothing that can interrupt this system. There's no end in sight. So
I don't think
what
that's
are we
why
supposed
people
to do?
don't like us, though. I think
it's exactly why people don't like us.
Not because then there's no
at,
candidates coming up, or because of what's happening on the ground with the political system.
No, because our political party enables us to go start wars in random places without really that much pushback. Like we can just go invade another country whenever we want, and then Russia does it, and we're like, "What are you doing?"
I think that's also just who we are, though, as a people that does it. It's the stereotype, right? You said, imagine if people came here and we hated them or were mean to them. And people have done that. People probably have stories. There's stories, this is what happens when you paint with a broad brush, right? Mm. But the broad brush of a stereotype of American is someone similar to me, but maybe not as nice. Who's big, loud, obnoxious, comes over there, doesn't know where New Zealand is, doesn't give a flying fuck that he doesn't, because he's from the greatest country on earth, and he will tell you about it. Mm-hmm. And he will say that over and over again. And that puts a chip on people's shoulder. Not to mention the fact that, like, in a lot of ways, America is leading the charge. So there is that, too. So there is an envy on certain things. Obviously not education. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a thing that, like, it's back to that newsroom thing from the newsroom, that first scene you ever saw, right? Where, like, Jeff Daniels unloads on that lady of, like, why America isn't the greatest country. But we never talk about that. We just say we are. And we believe it.
That's all you got to do. You just fucking say you are something and everyone else believes it.
Internet superstars.
Yeah, that's how things happen. I've never experienced it because I've never been out of the country. So I haven't experienced that, but I have experienced just being here when I like meet people from other places, because I am also, like Greg, a perfect example of what people don't like about America.
Yeah.
And I don't know shit about a lot of things. And they're very quick to point that out. I'm like, well, you're kind of an asshole for that then. But that doesn't hold up with them. But like I have a lot of friends from like just the UK who I'll see randomly, and they just I feel like I'm constantly being judged. Everything, always, with this very specific people. Some people have been very nice, but like there's this one guy who's every move I make, every order at a restaurant is always like, of course you ordered that. It's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, why you gotta be like that?
What do you get in the party platter or something?
Fucking cheeseburger.
Fatty?
It's always a
What are you doing?
cheeseburger. But it's just like, of course you get a cheeseburger. You're such an American. It's like, well, I don't know what to tell you,
goddamn
dude.
right I am,
It's
and I'm
really
proud
good.
of it.
I mean, I feel like we get a lot. I don't want to. You're right. I don't want to speak in broad strokes. So I'm going to talk about myself here a little bit. I feel like I am uneducated when it comes to politics, largely, especially global politics. I feel like because our country is so big, it's hard enough just keeping up what's going on in the United States, let alone the rest of the world. Yeah. Because you have to also remember, like you said, like most of these countries can fit in the United States. Actually, what is it? Like half of Europe can fit in the United States. I forget how big the continents are. I may have made that up completely.
Oh, I think all mainland Europe could fit, with the exception of Russia and the United States.
Yeah. So I mean, think about that. Like we have our own. So there's, our own world that we have to worry about that's got its own flaws. And then, of course, we go to these other countries and we're completely, I'm completely ignorant of their politics, their traditions, and any of the sort of colloquialisms that would endear them to me. So when I go over there, I'm a jackass too. And it's like, well, there's this guy not knowing and not understanding our customs and not trying to understand our customs. Because there is that too. Like my wife, when she goes to travel, she'll make an honest effort to understand the culture. And that's, it's still not 100%, but at least it's 2 or 3% more than I'm putting in. Whenever I go anywhere. When I go to Germany, I'm just like, oh, cool, Germany. I make some probably off-color remarks about German sausages and leave it at that. That's as far as I go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that we have to separate the kind of cartoon image of the American, like that's kind of like not beloved, but like lovable, where it's like, oh, you're fat and you like cheeseburger, whatever it is, or whatever, and from like the real harshness of what I experienced, because I've experienced like the comical, like, oh, you're an American kind of thing, and I'm like, yeah, I am, I'm proud of it, but like this particular encounter in Iceland was like quite hostile, and to me it was like, I get it, I do get it. I don't think sometimes people put themselves into our shoes, and I think you kind of brought it up, Nick, where it's like we are a self-contained world kind of in the United States, and I don't think it's not the nature of our own bravado or our own arrogance. It's the nature of being a really big country. Mm-hmm. With a
millions of how many? Do we have
320 million people in this country.
Not even.
We're not like India but India and China might very well be the same, where that's their world. Yeah. Now like one thing I realized in Iceland when I was there, because they import everything, they have nothing there like naturally except for like some minerals and stuff like that, is like their supermarkets are like sparse. Like they don't like I went into a few, like, just I like going to supermarkets in other countries, like that's like one of my favorite things to do, because it's just like what are they eating, what are they a little bit of produce, a little bit of like super expensive meat and stuff like that, and I'm like, we take a lot of things for granted here, that I can go into the supermarket that's fucking massive and buy whatever the fuck I want, you know what I mean, whatever I want, and they're like every 2 blocks, It's like some parts of being overseas that made me thankful for being an American, because we are really a land of plenty, because we're so domestically kind of we have like a domestic charge where we're basically able to kind of like feed ourselves and stuff, at least with food, not so much with manufactured items. But I think people don't put themselves into our shoes sometimes, where it's like we are ignorant as a people of the rest of the world because we don't really have the necessity of needing to know or go to these other places. And that's not an arrogant thing. That's just because there's so many of us here.
Yeah.
It's not like we're from the Netherlands or whatever, where it's like a small country and you like have to try not to leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, this is what I've always taken up too, of like just the fact of being in Italy or France, and like when you say we're going to another country, for us that's a huge plane ride, and it's a fucking train ride. You know what I mean? It's so easy to be in France. I think you told a story, or wherever you were, in Germany or France or wherever, or London, and you were Goldfarb wanted to go somewhere.
Oh yeah, we were in Germany and Goldfarb was like, let's just go to France.
Yeah, it's like that's a real thing that could happen. Yeah, like, whereas here it's like so much production to go anywhere that it's the same way when I explain to somebody. Well, when I am overseas or talk to somebody who's from overseas and I'm trying to explain something about, I went to Mizzou, and then I start having to break it out, like, okay, well, do you know Missouri, the states, do you know this, I go like that to get bigger and bigger to try to show you what I'm talking about, right? And that's just this thing when it's like we're saying how small some countries are compared to what the United States is. Yeah, it doesn't make them better or worse. It's just like that's just the nature of growing up American.
Yeah,
And I feel like some people kind of turn on us as not being cultured, and that's fine if that's the way people feel. And I agree. I think as a people, we're not cultured. Yeah. But I think there's a flip side to the coin, is that we are global culture. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't want to admit to. You know what I mean? Is that one thing I couldn't believe in Iceland, and Reykjavik's not like there's tourists there, but it's not. It is what it is. That place is fucking American. You know what I mean? Like. It's not at
least westernized.
Dude, I went to the nicest restaurant in Iceland. I don't remember the name of it. We went there. It was fucking super expensive. It was awesome. It was all like Americana. They like these great chicken wings and these kebabs and steaks and all. It was awesome. And then you go to there's burger places everywhere, and it's not to say like what I'm saying is that we've given so much to the world. And I think people kind of take that for granted too. A lot of the music a lot of people listen to overseas, or movies or TV shows they listen to, are American.
It's just Kanye. They only listen to Kanye.
It's like the way a lot of people dress and the way the actors that people might imitate or the movies that they might be. Well, it's not to say that Europe's not creating great things or Asia's not creating great things or Northern Africa or Africa. Whatever. It's that we really are the epicenter of culture in a broader sense. We don't have an old culture. We don't have a refined culture.
We have a pop culture.
We have a pop culture.
Well, it's really weird. It's really weird when you see like K-pop music videos, and then they're all wearing like these weird mixes of like things that were in 90s hip-hop videos. And you're like,
or there's a breakdown of an English where they start talking in English.
Like, all that stuff too, yeah. But it's just so weird that they'll be wearing like basketball jerseys and holding up WWE championships. And you're like, huh? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Turns out that rap was all about 1997
right.
Yeah.
No, it's usually
SummerSlam.
It's not.
Well, I mean, with fashion, fashion is one of those interesting things that like could be a topic all to its own, because generally a lot of the fashion trends start in Europe and then they trickle out here, and then we kind of bounce back to the rest of the world. That's my sort of layman's understanding of how that all works. But yeah, when they have Fashion Week, they'll have Fashion Week in Milan. All of the big designers will get together and talk about what the next year is going to basically be, and that's essentially what we see. Those trickle to New York first, and then to New York and LA first, and then I don't know how they get disseminated to the rest of the world.
Kanye.
European and Asian fashion has always been sort of like they kind of find it and put their own twist on it. But I agree with Colin. It's unfortunate that our pop culture is the culture that we sort of export to the rest of the world. It didn't used to be that way. I feel like we used to be a lot more conscious of the world, especially when we were fighting wars like Vietnam or we were in the Cold War. Like, I think it's because often we didn't have the internet, and so there wasn't that thing that pulled all of our attention away, right? We just had newspapers, and potentially someone was going to drop a nuclear bomb on us at any given time. So that was kind of like, hey, pay attention to what's going on in the world, because Russia might, by way of Cuba, launch some nukes at us.
I'm so happy that's just not how it is now.
I mean,
it's just BuzzFeed lists.
It still is, but we're
too busy with BuzzFeed lists and know what's going on.
Just to care about it. Like I was talking to Colin earlier, it's like a lot of people are saying that we're in the middle of a second Cold War with Russia, which I think is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you start saying that, then it becomes true.
Stop saying it then. You're the problem.
But I will say this: I'm disappointed with myself that I don't.
Problem solver.
I'm disappointed with myself that I don't know a lot about. Like, I think the average American should at least have sort of a cursory knowledge of what's happening in countries where we're fighting wars, where we're sending Americans to go and die in. And it's disappointing to myself every time I learn about what's happening in, Afghanistan, or what's happening in Iraq, or what's happening in Syria, or what's happening, between Palestine and whoever Palestine's pissed off at, which I'm assuming is always Israel.
Yeah. Tale as to old as time.
See, even there, I'm hesitant to say Palestine and Israel because I don't want to get that wrong because I'm not quite sure exactly what that history is. But it is disappointing that we're sending countless Americans over there to defend something that I'm not even sure why they're going over there, what the kerfuffle is all about. We should know that. Like, we're spending trillions of dollars in defense money to go all around the world and do these things, and I don't have a fucking clue why we're doing most of that, except the only thing that I hear over and over again is because someone has an oil interest there. So we're allying there to have sort of strategic stronghold for oil.
That's probably the reason why we're in a lot of places. But yeah, it's like the point I'm trying to get to, I think, is that when I go to other countries, I've been really fast. I read a voracious amount about other places, especially when I'm going there. And I like to learn about them, and I like to learn about what they do. And I know that, like, I'm the doofy American in a lot of these places, especially Japan, where it's like, I don't speak Japanese, and I'm sorry. Like, I try to at least be humble about it. And I couldn't imagine speaking to a tourist in the United States the way I was spoken to in Iceland by that woman. You know what I mean?
I can't believe she spoke to you. Like, out of all the situations, out of all the tourists, it was Colin Moriarty that got this talk.
She picked the
That's
wrong.
so funny.
Italian
yeah, and I was
I
was super combative with her, and I definitely, hurled some insults at her, and I'm not sorry about it. But like and it definitely amused Cheryl's friends, but because they again never saw that, like, they don't know me well enough to know that that's like pretty much everyday Colin. But what, like, I try to go with an appreciation to other places and learn about them. One of the things I think about is, like, I hate the fucking TSA, right? Like, whenever they go through my shit, I give them like just a
I know, I've traveled with you.
Yeah, but when I went to Germany, they went through my bags. I didn't say anything. I'm like, I'm in your country now. You're letting me in, and this is the way it's gonna go, I guess. And
I quote, as Colin goes through every single time, "Have fun violating my civil rights. Have fun." What is it you say? You're like, this was not in the Declaration. No,
it's an illegal search and seizure. It's a Fourth Amendment.
It's hilarious.
But I just, I understand that some Americans go around the world or just talk on Twitter or whatever and beat their chest and are like, we're the best. And I do agree with Nick. I do think we are like the best in a lot of ways. But that's just me being like a home fan, like a home team fan.
Yeah.
And like, it's just, I wish that people would put the shoe on the other foot and kind of realize, like, okay, you feel this way about us, but why do you think that we're like this? And why do you think that, like, maybe you have a kind of a comic book image of us, but maybe we're just like you, But
I mean, like, you're just talking about being racist or bigoted in any way. I mean, look at how people have talked and thought about French people forever. Oh, they smell and this and we berets and shit. Like, it's the same thing.
Oi.
Like, that exists everywhere. Oi. Horrible Australian impressions. We had one man. He was a godsend named Steve Irwin, and we based our impression on him. Paul Hogan somehow too.
No,
I mean, it's everywhere. Right. It's every country. It's every culture.
You're right. It's just unfortunate because I see American culture so much in other people, when they're on their, like, I've said it before on Twitter, is that people on their iPhones, on Twitter or Facebook, listening to Kanye and watching the Kardashians on TV, and I'm like, dude, that's all American. Now you can hate us all you want as you're on your MacBook, on your Chrome browser, Googling something, but like, think about the irony of that. You know what I mean? Like, we give a lot to the world, and that's the one thing that, like, I want people to just. It doesn't make us better. It just means that, like, when I have encounters like this, I'm just confused by them because. We've done bad things, but we've done great things. And I wish that we could just kind of focus more on the great things. There's so much divisiveness. And it was startling for me to experience it firsthand. I was like, I almost thought that, like, people really didn't feel that way about us, But then I experienced it.
I think people, And
I'm not saying everyone feels that way. Again, most people in Iceland were very nice.
Yeah, and I mean, I've encountered a ton of people that love America, want to visit America, like what we stand for, like the culture, and like what we export. But I do think that, I mean, my overall feeling is that I think more people would be able to tell you more facts about the Kardashians than the war in Iraq. That would be my general feeling. Like, if I asked 10 Americans, give me 10 facts about Iraq, they would probably be able to name all the Kardashian sisters, what the shows are that they're in, who they were married to, and what their kids are named, before they could tell me 10 facts about Iraq.
That's an endemic Western problem, though, I think, because I think that if you England was involved in the Iraq War for a long time, and they would have the same problem. I don't believe for a second that the English are more politically active than we are. We're all fucking, apathetic at this point, and it's sad.
It's sad.
But the one thing that we can, I want people to come to the United States. I want them to enjoy it here. I want them to have good experiences. Horror, what Greg said is true, and what you guys were insinuating was true. I am sure that there are foreigners that came to the United States that will never come back here because of an experience they had here. Because there are assholes all over the fucking place. When you have 320 million people, millions of them are going to be assholes. Millions of them. So like it's just
imagine being anywhere from the Middle East, looking any sort of Middle Eastern and coming here with the 8-month span of after 9/11. Just think about that. Think about what you may have encountered coming into JFK. You know,
I like how you limited it to 8 months.
I mean, you know what I mean. Like no one. Well, they didn't. They limited travel for what? Like I think that.
I would say just any time in the last 14 years.
That's probably true. That's probably true. I mean,
like this.
Imagine coming in and out of security now. Even if you're a citizen of the United States and you're Middle Eastern, like it's we have a lot of
stereotypes suck. And that's the long and short of it. And like having to pay for past mistakes sucks. And like the fact that what you think of a German, right? Like there's still World War II. Well, I was trying to think of this for this reference. Remember during 50 Shades of Grey, there were 2 trailers that were back to back. Where I was like, man, if you're a German in here, you just got punched twice.
Oh yeah.
Because they were both like, man, Germany sucks. And it's like, fuck, you know what I mean? Just because they're still harping on everything that happened over there generations ago. And that's just how this goes and how stereotypes are.
That's a great example. Like German guilt is a real thing. There's a German word for it. I don't know what it is, but like. That's a real thing, but like we often have to let go of the sins of the past and the sins of the father, and that's kind of the same way for us in terms of history. Mm-hmm. Now we can talk about the positive things we did with history. We revived smaller Republican democracy that spread all over the fucking world. We did that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, and so there are things in our history also that we can be proud of. But the thing that I walked away from this being is that like I have to be more worldly. I have to judge people. As individuals, which I judge this woman by, and not by the Icelandic people, for instance, which were really extraordinarily nice to us, except for that one instance, and kind of have some sort of like we're all the same. Like I want people to come here and enjoy the fruits of America, and I want to go over there and enjoy the fruits of England or enjoy the fruits of France or whatever, or China or Japan. There's way too much divisiveness, and anti-Americanism is real. But maybe to Greg's point, it's not any faker or more real than anti-French sentiment, or anti-Korean sentiment or whatever you might have. So I mean, that's a good point. And you could just because
I feel like it is though. I feel like we get.
Oh man,
we do so much more in the world than the French do, and so there's so much more left open for people to criticize us based on. Like how many places is the United States military right now? As opposed to the French military, as opposed to the Italian military, or even England. Like, we're everywhere, man. We've got bases everywhere, and we won't shut any of them down for strategic advantage.
This whole "we" thing is so weird to me.
You have to say it though, because we pay for this.
And
I'll tell you, what was that statistic? You said 50% of the budget goes toward the military. Think about that. How much is the national budget?
3.2 trillion or something like that.
That's a lot of cash that we're putting out there to keep our 18-year-olds in foreign countries with guns, asking them to fight people that they don't.
That's
really
the general
understand.
budget, not the.
That's true. Well, the military budget would be half of that, then 50%. The defense budget. Rather.
Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to bring this topic up. I thought it was an interesting topic. We have a lot of European listeners and just Australian listeners and Asian listeners and people from all over the world. Israel, and I'm curious in the comments too how they feel and like what their encounters were. I wanted to kind of solicit that as well because maybe they've had the bad experiences we were alluding to, where maybe they come to the States and are treated. But I couldn't. The one thing I told my group when I was there, and we all agreed, was that I couldn't imagine talking to anyone like that. Not only a traveler or a foreigner or whatever in the United States, someone who's just here, anyone. And I think that tells that's the difference between. Now, if you come at me, my friends, I'll fucking knock you out. You know what I mean?
Talk shit, get shot.
That's like a different, that's a different kind of situation. You talk shit to Greg or anyone like that,
right.
But I'm not going to instigate things with you.
But do you feel like it was bigger than this, or do you feel like it was on the level of my team's playing your team and we're just going to start throwing random facts at each other to piss each other off?
No, I think that it was in the moment pretty real, and in hindsight pretty real.
Really?
And I don't know if I did it justice about how fucked up it was. I've also thought about it so much that you lose sight of what specifically happened, and I was so amped up.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like a perfect situation where
I know. You waited your whole life for that moment to fight for America.
I'll never be able to fight on the battlefield. That's the best I could do in some fucking bar in Iceland.
That's awesome.
But nonetheless, I wanted to just bring that up there. People, as far as I'm concerned, people are welcome to this culture. People are welcome. American culture is truly a melting pot. We don't have a deep 1,000-year history like the Icelandic people do, for instance, but we have a history of melding different races and different cultures and different ethnicities and religions together, and it made something uniquely American. No one can deny the success of this country. you know, and no one can deny the success of this country's pop culture, which is everywhere. Maybe for the worst, but we all enjoy it and enjoy the fruits of America anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to throw that out there, solicit other people's opinions on their experiences, what their opinions are on this. You can let us know in the comments, or you can tweet at me, of course. I'm always happy to talk about it. But I do want to say again, as I prefaced it, my experiences otherwise overseas in the countries I've been in have been nothing but positive. And people have been really nice to me. And I know I'm the doofy American in Germany walking around saying, the first thing I say is, I don't speak German. And they're probably like, hello, you know, I speak English because I live on a continent where we know 3 or 4 languages, you know.
Yeah. Well, as a general note, the first thing you should always learn when you go to another country is how to say please and thank you.
Oh, I mean, I know how to say those things, but when you're having like a conversation at a restaurant or something like that, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to, like, we were reading Icelandic terms, and one of the guys there was trying to learn things, and I'm like, I'm not even going to bother, because like I'm going to butcher and insult these people. I'm going to say something totally wrong and to get us killed or something like that. So,
I went to Thailand, and it took me like 4 days to figure out how to say thank you, it's different depending on the whether it's masculine or feminine, like you're talking to. The gender. I can't remember how to do it, but it's like that. And same with Japan. Japan is like, you can't not be a caricature of an American in Japan, because it's such a culture shock where you're like, what the fuck is happening all the time? And people are looking at you because you're the one white dude in the sea of Japanese guys, and then you're just like, what a fucking idiot this guy is. Look at him, he's smoking there. He can't smoke there. You feel like a fish out of water, but in a good way. And I think all of us, the more you travel, like Tim, you should get out there and travel. It's important to feel
all the stuff makes me sound like I'm just gonna stay here and not insult people.
No, I mean, I feel like it's important to go to other countries and be in those and have those experiences where you're like, wow, I'm an American in a foreign country. It's a good experience to have.